Hello, ladies and gentlemen, my brothers and my sisters. It is Brother Solis live with another episode of Coffee and the Truth. And y'all already know, I got my brother, Mr. Hall, with me today. And Elliot, Mr. Elwood, Texas, he's on this episode. You just won't hear his voice because we don't take no days off. So he's working the sound because he humbled himself under the mighty hand of God, that in due time he will exalt his voice on another podcast, because he made room for Sister Heather. Now, this is a sister that I honestly can say she's a sister to me. Similar backgrounds and things of that nature, but just the Lord really put her on my heart to take her under my wing, and I shared some ministry things with her. She's got a great mindset, overcome a lot of things, but one thing I can say about this woman, what I love, is that she just ain't gonna just fit in with the crowd. She gonna find out what she knows, and she gonna get rooted in it. And I got to see that and witness that, and all these great things about her. She stays in her word, okay? So don't think I just picked her because the Lord put her on my heart, all right? It's not manly favoritism, it's godly favoritism, if that's even a word. But she stays in that word. She stays prayed up, has characteristics that I can honestly say that I should be having. She's just an awesome person, a soul winner, you name it. I mean, she's just everything that a Christian should be. And we got to discussing some things, and she shared with me something that really blew my mind. And I told her, you know what, write that down. At first, I just wanted to be wrote down. And I said, you know what, it's time that I put a woman on this podcast, because y'all know I just had nothing but men. There's nothing against women, okay? It's just men tend to open up more to men. But she said, I'll do it. So without further ado, Heather, welcome yourself to Coffee and the Truth.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate that. Hello.
So we're talking about Adam and Eve. I do young marrieds for those that don't know. And so we tend to talk about things in marriage, and it's not really doom. It's more on the gloom side. Just things that a lot of young married people don't realize in marriage. And me and my wife, for the most part, been married 6 years. I'm 30 years old. So we got married at a young age, and we learned a lot. I soaked this stuff up in, and my wife kind of just like rode along and got dragged along, as she would say she felt in the beginning. So we used a lot of our experience to give unto them. And so we came together one day, and we were talking, and I got to the point about, I guess if I would title it, it was strength and weakness. And I was speaking how the Bible states that a man is supposed to treat a woman as a weaker vessel. And little did I know that I was going to ask Sister Heather's opinion about this and get a really great mindset. I wish I could say teaching, but this is a mindset, and this is where I love the type of mindset she has. And so share with me a little bit about that.
So I think when we were sitting there and we were talking about it, the first thing that came to my mind was weakness isn't really as weakness as we see it. It's not like, oh, I'm lesser. I think for women, weakness is because something you were to be cherished, something were to be loved, something were to be treasured. I think that women can be strong spiritually, and I do believe that we are weaker vessels physically. But I do believe that when the Lord was talking about weaker vessel, we are something when it comes to marriage and things like that. We are something that the men are to cherish and to love and to protect and to hold. Something to keep safe.
Do you feel that there's like an identity crisis when it comes to that statement? Because when you hear weaker, you automatically think somebody weak, right? Nobody wants to be weak. Nobody wants to be a pushover. Nobody wants to be a floor mat.
I do believe that because there's a lot of women out there that don't want to admit that we're weaker. You know, there's a lot of people that want to say, no, that's not something I want to be. I don't want to be the weaker vessel. And I think when we get to that point, we start to deny that weakness is something that God can use. You know, he's made strong in our weakness. And if we truly embrace that, then God can be made strong in our weakness. But if we sit there and try to be tough, we get our identity roles switched up because now the woman is trying to compete against the man.
And so, there's would be competition there. And so there can be competition within the same team. It's just against the opposing team, right? You know, kind of like football. If I'm the runner back and I got odds with the quarterback, it ain't going to be good, especially if it's so bad to where I'm competing with that person's role. Like, hey, I'm the all-star, not you, and or vice versa. And so we're going to start fighting against each other and allow the other team to win because we're not a team. We're actually opponents.
Yeah, when you start doing that, there's no unity in your household. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And when there's no unity in your household, how can God really work in it? Are we living by biblical standards? Are you truly being the woman that God has called you to be? You know, when we look at the Proverbs 31 woman, it says she was a businesswoman, but it doesn't say she put her business before her family. She made sure her husband had everything he needed. If you look in the Bible, Proverbs 31, it says that her husband lacked for nothing. You know, her husband lacked for nothing. Her household did not lack. She did have people that were helping her, and she was a businesswoman, but her business did not overtake her household. Her business was not over priority of her husband. She made sure that her household was in order, that her husband had everything he needed, that her kids were taken care of, and then she had a business on the side.
So you talked about a woman being a gift.
Yes.
Can you expand on that?
Well, when we look in Genesis and we look at Adam and Eve, how God created Eve, he created her as a gift for Adam. You know, think about it, Adam being the only human being on the earth, right? Everyone had a partner. Everybody had its person, its thing, basically. Well, you can imagine how lonely that would be, right? And so I think when God made Eve, he didn't just make her as a helpmate, but I think another word for helpmate is gift, right? Because when God presented Eve to Adam, Adam was like, flesh of my flesh, bone of my bone. And I don't think it was just like flesh of my flesh, bone of my bone. I think it was more poetic, like flesh of my flesh, bone of my bone. I love this. Look how beautiful this creation is. Thank you, Lord, for this gift. I mean, who doesn't love something that God has given them? God says he gives the perfect gifts. So if God gifted Eve to Adam, then that means women are to be a gift to their husbands. Women are created to be a gift. We're of value. We're of something precious, something to be adorned, something for our husbands to be astonished by. You know, we should not be being a burden. We should be showing our value. And if you're a daughter of God and if God has gifted you, God does not give bad gifts.
Did you always see yourself as a gift, or?
No. I grew up pretty hard. And so I don't think I really seen any value in myself. I didn't feel like I had a lot of worth. So this is something I wish I would have known growing up, because I probably wouldn't have gotten into a lot of things I've gotten into. If I would have known my value, I wouldn't have hung out with the people I hung out with. If I would have known my value, I wouldn't have gotten involved in the things I got involved in. If someone was like, hey, Heather, drink this alcohol right here, I could have been like, no, I'm worth more. But because I didn't have that word, I'm worth more, I was like, okay, I guess I'll try it. Let me try and find where I fit in. But when you're a child of God and you realize you are a gift created and designed for Him, created in specific, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
When you don't realize value, you're like, okay, I'll just go ahead and give in to this instead of saying I'm worth more. And that's something that I've talked to a young girl about recently, where I told her, every time you have these questions and every time you're facing these problems when you go to school, that's something I want you to repeat yourself. I want you to look in the mirror and I want you to say, I'm worth more. When temptation comes your way, I'm worth more. I'm of value. I'm a gift. I am something to be cherished, something precious.
Something that I was kind of thinking as well with the weaker vessel, word that was coming to me could have been vulnerable. And just like you're talking about a gift, if there's something that's precious or valuable, like for example, just going to a museum, when you see these artifacts and they're so valuable, but you don't see them just sitting out, because if they were just sitting out because they're valuable, they're vulnerable. If they're left out and they're unguarded and they don't have any protection, any security or anything like that, they'd be vulnerable to anybody just taking them, because I may not see their value, but somebody else will see their value and try to take that. And just like, even though you may not see your value, hell sees your value. And but just getting to that, like when you see things in a museum, they usually are behind glass. They usually have all of these alarms, and that's what I also feel goes along like with what you're saying, with that, where a woman could be vulnerable just being left out. What do you have to say about it? Or am I mistaken in my?
No, yes, because I guess when we look at artifacts like that, if we're talking about the case and the covering around her, if we're sitting, we wanted something to be protected. It is something we wanted to be protected because we are beautiful. We are to be cherished and to be adorned. But, I feel like that's where men come in, and men are like, okay, this is something that I get to love. This is something that I get to cherish, but it's also something I get to protect.
Yeah, it's great that you say that, because, Joshua, before he goes on, we know, what does he tell? The famous one that everybody quotes is, as for me and my house, we're going to serve the Lord. He's taken on that role as the protector of the house. This is how I protect my house, is by serving the Lord. And this is how I protect my wife. I see my wife as a gift, and I see her as treasure, and I see my children as treasure. And the way that I'm going to protect them and keep them in the case is by serving the Lord, because I seen, and we all know, if you read the Bible, this man witnessed some great things by the power of God just by being a servant unto the Lord. So when you hear Heather talk about being a servant unto her husband, don't think that she's meaning like a slave. What it means is they're working together. Because we don't say this no more. We call them co-worker or employers, and we're employees. But really and truly, back in the day, we'll be considered servants.
Yes.
We're a servant unto, and you have a great employer that will look at you and say, you know what, you're a great employee. And they'll benefit you and things of this nature, because y'all a team. You bring value. They bring value to you, right, on that paycheck. You know what I mean? And you help them make their paycheck. And so it's a teamwork when you look at it in marriage. But I love this mindset that the Lord given her about this gift, because she is my barber, all right? She be fading me up, so if you like the fade, that's her. And I was at the barbershop. We always get to talking at the barbershop. And today we actually got to talk, I guess, out loud, for the lack of a better word or whatever. I really don't try to talk personal conversations out in the open. I'm just that type of person. And so today we're discussing this gift and why women don't see it, because I told her I know for sure, me growing up, I wasn't finna let a woman know that she was a gift. I wasn't finna let a woman know that she was treasured. You know, I'm not knocking my daddy, but my daddy's famous saying to us was no commitments. You know, I was raised to look at a woman as temporary use. Well, a gift's not temporary use, baby. You gonna lock it down, and we gonna ride this thing out to death. You know, and I'm just being real. I'm not calling you this, but trash is something you misview. You don't care for it. You're gonna do whatever you want to do with it. You're gonna kick it. You're gonna leave it outside. You're gonna whatever you're gonna do because it has no value. But something that you love, what usually that is locked up in your house. There's a reason why people have safes in their home, because everything that they value inside that house is in that safe. Well, I wasn't finna tell a woman that, so I know if I wasn't finna tell women that, I never heard another woman tell another woman that. Yeah. So that's where we were talking, and I was all like, well, I feel that you need to talk about this because I don't think it's talked about. The reason why young women are out and about laying in different men's beds or allowing men to treat them that way, you know, is because they don't see the value within themselves. Mm-hmm. If I don't see that I'm $1 and all I look in the mirror is and see 2 cents, I'm going to treat myself like 2 cents because I don't understand my value. And so this is, by the way, for those that know Brother Tanner, this is his sister. Okay, so Brother Tanner was in the booth at church. I forgot what brother Sanford said, but I quoted it back to Tanner, and I'll just say, I told him, you're a child of God. I said, but you know what? It doesn't matter what I tell you. It's about what you tell yourself. Mm-hmm. And so if a young woman is constantly looking in the mirror and not seeing that value, she's going to start doing things that are worthless.
Yes. Because if a woman sees herself as a value, or even a young girl, and because, to be honest, it starts when you're young, right?
Right.
You start to get a mindset, whether it's built in you through someone else, whether you've had past experiences, whether you've been abused, you start to feel like you lose value. And so when we start to have that mindset of, okay, I don't have a value, well, then that allows me to walk into other doors and say, okay, well then if I really do not have any value, then I'm going to go try and find value in other things, right? I'm going to go try and find my value somewhere else. But it's just because no one has sat there and told them, you have value, you are important, you are special. God has created you to be a gift. You are a gift that is given.
Mm-hmm. So you've been with your husband
since junior high.
So it's a long time.
Yes.
I was about to say since 12 or something.
Yeah.
We were really young.
They were young. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is, do you felt before you knew let me backtrack here. Now that you have this mindset, do you feel you add more value to your relationship?
Absolutely. Because when you don't have value, you lack confidence. You have insecurities. Right. So you're walking around with all these insecurities and this lack of confidence. And when you have that, then, okay, are you cheating on me? Sitting there in junior high, hey, can I check your phone right now? You know what I mean? And when you have insecurities, that comes from a lack of value. Okay, I don't view myself as valuable, so I think that he's going to go over here and do this with somebody else, And when we find confidence in ourselves and confidence in God and knowing that we are valuable, I don't think that's something that we do. That's not something I do anymore, It's something where I can say I am of value to my husband. I know he wouldn't do anything like that because, sorry, allergies, because I have value. I know who I am, and I know that he sees value in me because I show it.
Right. I mean, we got to be real, and I talked about that last podcast, being real with yourself.
Yeah.
If you're not bringing value, don't expect somebody to value you. And I'm going to just be straight up transparent. I was never the type of guy that wanted to hook up with a girl on the first night. If she was that easy, nah. I'm just being real, because I was never that conceited to think that I was just one man that just had that gift. No, you ain't the first one to come with that hotline to that girl. You know what I mean? Somebody else did. You know what I mean? And so I was all like when I got with my wife, you know, I had a standard in women, because I wasn't finna just try to hook up with any girl like that. You know, she wasn't. You know, she didn't have this mindset, you know, at the time that we got together, but she just wasn't somebody that was just going to be out there either. And I'm not knocking anybody if they are, because I understand that you got to be built up like this. What we're talking about is something that people don't talk about. And even Heather, even though she didn't make those choices, but still she made foul choices in life that she looks back and says it was dumb, because she didn't realize you're worth more than that. You're more valuable than that. If I had that mindset, you know, I wouldn't have been an idiot and went inside of that building and caught a felony. I wouldn't have done those things. Why? Because I'm worth more than that. Yeah. You know, Brother Sanford said something that was so powerful, mind-blowing. He says, the two most important days in somebody's life is the day that they're born and the day that they find out why they were born. And that last one, a lot of people lack, including myself, until Jesus Christ told me and showed me who I truly was. You walk different, you talk different, you make better choices, trust me, because you understand that my purpose, and this is something that I try to instill in my young ladies and you know, the youth group, it's understanding that men are dogs. Mm-hmm. They are. You know, I'm just being real. You know, I was a dog. And I was a dog because I was raised to be a dog. And if you hang around with dogs, guess what you're going to get? Fleas. Mm-hmm. And so women need to understand that. And I shared this with Heather. I said, man, there was this one girl that I was with. I never even attempted to, because the way she carried herself. You know, she made herself seem like, nah, I wasn't finna do that, so I didn't even try that with her, because I seen how much value she felt within herself. And so I was all like, okay, well, this one, she ain't the one. You know what I mean? And so I see that, but I noticed that she was probably one out of a million. And for the lack of a better, because my baby's one out of a million. All right. Getting brownie points on the podcast. But there was a lot of girls that weren't like her. There was a lot of girls I seen in my life that didn't see that worth, and so they fell victim to a lot of punchlines that men just share with each other. You know, and now you got broken homes. You got, you know, children raised up without their daddies and things of this nature, all because people didn't understand their worth. And so now that you see that you're a gift, as you said, talking about the weakness that a woman embracing, I guess you can say, the weakness. Mm-hmm. So how do you embrace being weak?
I mean, when you look at it as a treasure, right? When you look at it as you're of something of value, that weak doesn't mean that you're lesser. And I think a lot of people can misinterpret that, and they can say, oh, weakness just means I'm lesser, and you're trying to tell me I'm lesser. And I feel like a lot of women actually believe that weaker means lesser. And so they try so hard to not be women without realizing it. They try and make themselves strong like men. They try and put themselves out there and be tough. You know what I mean? But if we can actually embrace what God has created in us, that we are weaker. But let's not say, you know, let's not just think weak. Let's think fragile, precious. You know?
Yeah, I see what you're saying, because a man should be able to look at a woman and say, that's my value.
That's something I want to protect. And at the same time, women, whether they want to admit it or not, we enjoy the fact that our husbands can protect us. I like that I can be at home, and if I feel like I'm scared in the middle of the night, I can hit him on the chest and be like, hey, get up, go check that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because he sees me of value. Like, he's going to get his gun and he's going to be walking around like, what's happening right now? You know, do I need to protect this household? Do I need to protect my wife? But I think when we can stop looking at weakness as something wrong and start looking at weakness as something beautiful, something to embrace, something that God has given us, then we truly can have confidence in who we are and say, okay, God, you are strong where I am weak. God, you made me who I am. And then I feel like we wouldn't have as many women trying to be something they're not. They try to be tough. I know, because I was one of those girls. I was one of those girls that was so afraid of weakness. I would, you know, at night I was not in the best neighborhoods. So I would dress like a boy and make myself seem tough. I'd tuck my hair in my hat and I would walk down the street to go to the store or something. I shouldn't have been out that late, but I was. And so, you know, to go to the store, I'd dress like a boy. And to make myself seem tougher. Oh, if I make myself seem tougher, no one's going to mess with me. No one's going to bother me, type of thing. And I think that women nowadays do that in a different sense. If I make myself stronger, if I make myself the breadwinner of the household, if I can make myself seem more than a woman, then maybe I have more value. But you have more value if you just be the best woman you can be instead of trying to be something more. Why are we so afraid of the label woman? Why are we so afraid of the word weakness? You know?
Yeah, I mean, I see what you're saying. I mean, the best thing for you to do is embrace purpose. This is my purpose. This is what I was created for. Now, don't get us wrong and don't think that, oh, well, y'all those people that believe that the woman should be silent and the man tyrant. No, I don't. You crazy. Trust me. There's prophetess in the Bible, all right, for all y'all who think that woman can't talk. No, there's prophetess in the Bible. So if a man's a prophet, a prophetess is a woman, okay, or whatever. I'm not getting down on that. Y'all finna make me start preaching, y'all. But I'm not that. What I see in weakness is something that my dad would tell me. He would say that two type of people don't get along. And I see that in a lot of marriages, even in the church, where you got two people trying to be the head and they're constantly bumping heads.
Yes.
You got two preachers in the house, you got two ministers in the house, and they're constantly bumping heads. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying that it can't happen. You just got to know your role. You got to know like I said, yes, everybody wants to talk about, oh, Tom Brady's a GOAT. Tom Brady's a GOAT. He still needs a coach. He still needs a line. If that lineman says, no, you know what, Tom Brady, I feel like I'm the quarterback, and that center moves out the way, he's going to mess it up for the game. And that's what I'm saying. We talk about unity, right? We always talk about unity in the church, unity with the brother, fellowship and all that. Where did it start? Let us not forget that when God made man was alone. Mm-hmm. But it wasn't until he created woman because he's seen. It wasn't a brother he created. It wasn't a sister, a sister and a sister. He made a woman. Yes. To join him and to complete him. That was the first unity was man and God. Yes. Let's get that right, okay? Because they talked. They walked, they did everything together. So that's our first number one unity we should find is our unity with God. And then second one is our unity with our spouse. And so when I look at my wife and I understand she's a weak, because men who believe that they can be tyrants over your wives, you better watch out, because it says that I need to love that woman like Christ loved the church, and he was not a tyrant over his church. Mm-hmm. Yes. Don't be taking scriptures out of context, man. If you're going to think that you can lord over your wife and abuse her and talk to her however you want her and treat her like trash, Christ did not. And so you're neglecting scripture. I'm putting that out there. I've seen that a lot in my life. That's why I'm putting it out there, because there's a whole lot of misconception there. But when he seen woman, and I share this with you, he looked at her and said, this is what I've been looking for. Yep. He didn't say, this is what I've been looking for so I can treat her like trash. This is what I've been looking for because this is what's completing me.
Yeah, this is a gift.
I feel incomplete, and now I feel complete. And so if I see this, a person that makes me complete, I make it my job to understand their weaknesses so I can be strong.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why a woman should understand about the bracing the weakness, because now it's a teamwork. Because if y'all both strong and y'all not weak, what team do y'all have together?
Yep,
Tom Brady understands that he cannot be the line and he cannot be the runner back. What is his weakness? If that line's not strong, he's not strong. You get what I'm saying? So he got to make sure they're strong. That's why if you really pay attention, they got a great line, and that's what makes him a great quarterback. Take that line, and he can't do it all by himself. So they need to embrace their roles, but they work together. Hey, I need you, you need me. Being a tyrant's not going to do the job, buddy, because now you're making that woman more insecure than what she already is. I should be able to find my wife and find her insecurities and make them confidence. I should make her find her purpose in Christ, and so she can be confident with confidence in any situation. That's what I'm supposed to do. And you going to say something?
Oh, yes. I was thinking while you were saying that, and when we talk about our roles, not a lot of women want to embrace our roles. Submission is a big part of that. Submission is something that's really hard for, I feel like, any woman. But for me, it was really hard. I had to really learn and understand to help me. And I didn't understand it until I understood it as a gift. Because for me, I'm the breadwinner of a household, right? And it's not by the means of I wanted to be. It's just how it happened. And until my husband gets better. But so we're sitting there, and I was thinking about submission and how hard it was. Submission is the hardest thing, I feel like, for a woman to do, because then we have to say, okay, I'm going to comply even if I don't agree. You know, I'm going to allow these choices to be made and just pray about them. And I may say, hey, I really don't agree with that, but if that's what you want to go with, then let's go with it. For me, it was really hard when, like I said, being the breadwinner of the household. And so I had to really sit there and think about it before I did it. It is something I really had to pray about, because I was like, I'm just going to make these decisions. I make the money anyway. You know what I mean? But when we decide to play our roles, everything in the household really works a lot better. Everything comes together so much more. When I was able to sit there and say, okay, I'm going to submit to my husband, even though it's hard, because it's what God asked me to do. This is something that the Lord, and honestly, it's been so much better. It has been so much better. We're not clashing as much, because you want to know why? Because I was sitting there trying to, I guess you want to say, take the man's role while my husband was home, and he's already feeling like he's feeling like lesser of a man at home. And then here I am trying to make all the decisions. You know what I mean? How is that going to help him back on his feet?
Yeah,
I need
give
to
him
be,
the confidence he needs to get back on the seat.
Yeah. And so I'm like, okay, I need to be a gift, because I didn't understand it as help me. I was like, I need to be a gift. How do I be a gift? By not being a burden. How do I not be a burden? By being submitted.
So what do you apply this? I hear you saying the gift. What do you apply it to? Like, say you want to be a nagging wife. Do you stop yourself and realize that's not a gift? And
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, because you realize a gift is not a burden.
Right.
If I'm nagging and I'm acting crazy or all up in my feelings, then I'm being a burden to my husband. I have to stop, evaluate myself, and say, hey, am I being a gift right now, or am I being a burden? And God made me to be a gift.
And something that I, as y'all have been talking about that what I was thinking, like you were saying, about once you realize that, it made your relationship with your husband so much better. It made me think, even though I wasn't married, obviously, then there was relationships where, because you were talking about when you were insecure, you're like, well, let me look at your phone and see, who you've been talking to, even though he wasn't talking to nobody, I'm sure, probably. Yeah. But when I was dating somebody that was insecure, how I described it is, I'm going and I'm trying to move forward. And while I'm trying to move forward, I'm trying to build her up constantly and basically dragging her along and then when it comes to a point where I'm weak, now I have to build myself up. And at the same time, I'm trying to pick myself up and having difficulty. I'm having to pick her up as well. And it was so frustrating when I had dated that's what I felt like I was constantly dealing with, was having to build their insecurity constantly. And then when I started getting weak, I didn't have anybody building me up. So I had to build me and her at the same time, which it led to a lot of frustration. But when I started dating my now wife, what was amazing was it started feeling like everything was lighter. Like I had a lot of times, I'm sure even Brother Solis can attest, as a man, I feel like a lot of times we feel so much weight on us because of what we're trying to do and what we feel that God's placed on our life. But as soon as I met Lauren, it felt like things were lighter, because it's not a matter of now I'm having to constantly build her up, but if I'm low, she's able to build me up. If she's low, I'm able to build her up. And that's what it's supposed to be, and how it's supposed to operate is we're working together. And I also felt like it kind of went into when we're saying that the wife's like weaker, or that the woman's weaker, what's amazing is she's actually more strong than a lot of times even men of the Bible gave them credit for, because Abraham wouldn't have Ishmael if it wasn't listening to his wife. Like there's a lot of moments in the Bible where just a woman speaking is what ended up changing a whole course of things. And it's not a matter of a woman being that she had no power, that it was literally she had that power, that she could speak to her husband in a time where he's struggling and dealing with something, and it could end up changing everything. Yep. And that was just what I felt, that the kind of as we were talking, that's what I was kind of feeling, is and I think Brother Solis, you talked about it when we were in Young Marrieds before. I don't know if it was the same moment, but you said when the woman was created, it was from his side. And it was because they were meant to lead side by side, work together, not as a matter of hey, I'm going to do this and you're just going to be a slave behind me and do everything I tell you to do. No, we're a team and we operate together.
Yeah, I mean, that same thing whenever God manifests himself in the flesh, he walked with his disciples side by side. And I know we get crazy about, Jesus calling Peter a devil. But really and truly, if you look at it, he was telling them, you're jumping out of your role. We're a team here, and you're trying to jump ahead of me. You're trying to say, oh, no, you're not going to let me be crucified. Do you not realize I need to be crucified? It has to be fulfilled. This is my will. It has to be done, and I'm the only sacrifice that is worthy to die that can take away people's sins. And now you're jumping out of role, and you're trying to put yourself ahead of me, and it doesn't work that way. And so he would just remind them, look at what you're doing. Take that in consideration. If I'm jumping out of my role in marriage, what am I becoming? Jesus Christ will call him a devil, not out of not just calling him out and saying, oh, you're a devil and that's all you'll ever be. No, he wasn't telling them that. He's just letting them know, look at what your actions are going to make you if you keep making that. You keep choosing to have those in your heart. This is what it's going to make you, and this is where it's going to lead you into. And think about it. If you continue being a nagging wife, let's be real, you're gonna lead yourself right to divorce.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Into separation. And that's what he's saying. Hey, what you're doing right now is separating yourself from me, Peter. Get back in line. Get back in your place. Come on, we're a team here. Let me do what I'm supposed to do, and you do. And they did. Once Peter found out his role, found out his purpose, look how he made, one mistake or whatever afterwards, but I mean, in the Gospels, he was just constantly bumping his head. You know what I mean? And so when you find that purpose and you find that role, then you work as a team. You get what I'm saying? So I hear you say weakness, but how can you be strong in weakness? Because we're not trying to straight up telling women, y'all y'all weak and there's no strength in y'all, because there's great strength in women. So how do you be strong in weakness?
No, yeah, I truly believe that women are very spiritually strong. But when I talk about strength and weakness, it's not of my own strength. You know, I truly believe, you know, when God says, I am made strong in your weakness, I believe that's something that we can really take into that and say, hey, this is really hard for me right now. Submission is really hard for me. Or, you know, I'm struggling with this, Lord. Or I could actually say, okay, I need you to be strong here for me. I need your strength to get through this.
Yeah, which is right. I love that, because if I was not weak, how would I find out that there's strength in this relationship? You get what I'm saying? Some kind of strength, because look, guys, I've been married, you know, and since I am married and been married, there's times in your marriage you look over and you wonder if that person's on the same level as you.
Sometimes you look at it and you're like, are they even on the same team as me right now, Lord?
Yeah.
Help me out here.
Yeah, but it's in that weakness, when you find out that weakness and you become that strength. And you, like I told my wife is, for the most part, she's not like a lot of women that just want to be all up involved in ministry like that. She is involved. And you know what I told her today? You want to know one of her biggest involvement in the ministry with me is? It's not preaching with me. It's not giving Bible studies with me. It's simply knowing that there's somebody that sees something in me that I cannot see in myself.
Yeah, encouraging.
Somebody to sit there and say, this is the will of God for your life. You know what? You're just in a season right now. That's what I need the most. I don't need somebody who can, you know, outdo me in any Bible study, or outpray me in any given prayer, or outfast me in any given fast. I need somebody to sit there and say, you know what? Don't forget this is your purpose. Right now you're in your feelings, or right now, you know, yeah, it is bad, but you got purpose. We're gonna make it out, because we need that. I don't need somebody, you know, trying to be me.
Yeah.
I need somebody, and same thing with her, you know, because we both don't got this figured out. You know, we got the manual, we got the book, we got the God, but there's a lot of things that we're trying to figure out, right? Because, you know, everyday living, and you're trying to figure out how to operate in everyday living. She wasn't given an example by her parents, and I wasn't given an example by my parents. You know, nobody showed me. I can't pick up the phone and be like, hey, you know, Dad, you got this successful marriage, you know, how did you do it? And she can't do the same thing, so we got to try to figure this thing out. But one thing I have learned is that what killed me in my relationship with her is that I was an insecure egg. One of the biggest and ugliest arguments that ultimately almost led us to divorce was the fact that I was insecure because of me.
Yeah.
And because I never opened up and I never shared it, because I never seen the purpose, the value. And trust me, it would change your life. You know, glory be to God. But even in the youth ministry that I see, once I finally allowed the Lord to show me my purpose, you like the way I worded that, right? Me. It wasn't him, it was me. It changed my whole view of ministry. You know, I come to love this youth ministry. I think it's the best ministry in the world, and I wouldn't change that for nothing. But a lot of it had to do with me and being in the way of what God needed to do. And that's the one thing that I tell people. You want to be successful in ministry, get you out the way. Get you out the way. Because I can guarantee you can have the fasting down, you can have the praying down, you can have the word down. But if you got you in the way, it does not matter. Because I had those three things. I did. But I still had me in the way. And as long as you got you in the way, Peter, hey, get behind me, Satan. Get behind me, Satan. I'm trying to do a work. Thank you that you want to be so involved in it that you think you me, but I don't need you being me.
Yeah.
I need you playing your role. And so, finding out that weakness, even within ourselves, we see it that Paul, you know, would seek the Lord, and he would tell him, of course, about, you know, no, Basically, no, I'm not going to take this thorn from you because in my weakness, you're going to fall. I'm strengthened in weakness. And when we see that in the marriage, husbands, we got to understand that our weakness, that woman is our strength. I love this book that my wife read. And in that book, it was basically telling the woman, what husband, you can have all the cleaning down, you can have dinner made, but what good is all that if you're a nagging wife?
I feel like, to me, a woman's word can either be encouraging to her husband or it can destroy them.
Yeah, and vice versa. Vice versa. Because y'all are weak. Let's be real. Women tend to be more emotional than men.
Yeah.
So because of that, and I was talking with Brother Hall about this, there's insecurities that we harbor that our spouse hits on, and next thing you know, we blow up.
Oh, yeah.
It happened in my marriage, folks. There's one thing I choose to be on this podcast, and that's transparent. And it was in my marriage. Things that, I would say to my wife jokingly would hit her insecurity, and next thing you know, she's flaring up and vice versa with me. That's why I tell people, your best bet in marriage is to find out what y'all insecurities is and get rid of them.
Yeah.
Because if y'all want to have arguments and y'all want to be fighting with each other constantly, keep insecurity in y'all lives, because that's all it's gonna do for y'all.
Yeah. Find your weaknesses and help be each other's strengths.
Right.
Yeah, because I think there's a reason that in Proverbs it says it's better for a man to dwell in a rooftop than in a white house with a brawling woman. Because I mean, I just talking about like contention and stuff like that. Like there's a reason it's saying that, because it's not like you don't want to be home then,
Right.
If that's all you're gonna come home to, you don't want to be home. And I think.
Yeah.
Oh, what?
No, go ahead. Sorry.
But I just really think that I had something, and it was and it had left. So somebody else may have to speak into.
We're gonna find it one day.
Yeah, because it was going into that whole into the whole strength and weakness thing, and about how and I got it now. So it's not I used to always think, okay, because it's preached so many times, or that it's made to seem this way when you're single, like, oh, well, don't focus on a wife because you can do so much. Like even the Apostle Paul talked about forbidden to marry and all of that. So a lot of times I feel it's almost perceived as if you get married, because he's like, oh, well, if it's better to marry than to burn. So it's like, oh, well, if you can't stay single, then go ahead and get married. And it's almost kind of felt like a weak thing to do. At least that's how it was perceived to me when I'm going and I'm hearing these things. But what I started realizing, especially as mine and my wife's relationship started developing, is it's more of, I can do so much on my own. She could do so much on her own. But when we come together, we can do more together than we ever could do by ourselves. And that's what the marriage is meant to be, is when we come together, there is a strength and there is a purpose that would never have been there before. There's people that can be reached. There's we're more dangerous together than we would have been just separately. Because, I mean, I could, like, do you ever see like a soldier or whatever, even in I think you were brought up like with teams and stuff like that. Like, people can talk about the greatest player of all time, but if they're the only one on the field, how amazing are they? They're only as good as their team. And it's the same thing with a marriage. We're only as good as when we're coming together. I can't do everything on my own. There's things I'm going to miss because I'm just one person. But when I have someone with me, there's so much more that can be done.
Yeah, that's the unity. You know what I mean? That's where, there's strength in unity. And that's when we talk about even having unity in the body of Christ. It's another example.
Yeah.
On how you could do that. But what first you're touching on right before that, how you said about, I don't want to come home to that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think that's another thing that we could look at. I don't want to come home to that. Are you being a gift in your household? You know what I mean? so many things when it comes to that. About even, okay, let's say my husband goes to work, right? And I'm at home and the house isn't clean and it's dirty and I look a mess. The house looks a mess. The kids are a mess. You know what I mean? Am I really being a gift? Am I really being something he wants to come home to? Am I really helping him when he's going out and he's going to work and all the women out there are dressed up nice, cleaned up, and he comes home and I'm still in my pajamas and I've been in my pajamas all day?
Chilling on the couch.
You know what I mean? And so I think that's another aspect too. It does say that for us to be the homemakers, and I don't think that there's nothing wrong. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. You know, I think a lot of people could sit there and say, oh, well, you know, now modern days where, oh, I'm offended by that, or, you know, they start to get into the whole, what is the woman thing?
It really truly becomes a defensive deal, and then now you got people wanting to fight you just because. And people will call me traditional. You know, I'm the one that works. My wife's a stay-at-home wife, and she does an awesome job. And that I took that because even when I was out there, before I, you know, came to church, because I always wanted my wife to feel that she didn't have to work. You know, not saying that I was scared for her to work or nothing like that. I just felt that I wanted my wife to know that she can stay home and whatever she chooses to do, she can do that. You know what I mean? Because her bills are paid for. Because I'm out there. And my wife, I mean, she's been really great to me. She, for real. Like I said, she has learned a lot. We don't have this stuff figured out, but I can tell you we are not where we used to be. By a long shot, by the grace and the glory to God for that too. You know, she picked up and learned a lot of things. And she has become, that's my A1. That's my A1. That's my baby. And we learn to talk to one another. We learn to understand roles because my wife was kind of like you were saying, you know, submission wasn't her word. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so, and I think it doesn't have to deal with just women. It's just American deal. You tell me that I can't do something, watch me. Yeah. You know what I mean? And so,
well, I think a lot of times it can, even with like what you were saying with how sometimes women perceive that, it's like it really, what did you talk about, Brother Solis, when you were talking about the insecurity? We cover it up with pride. Like that's really all it is. You know, we're like, nah, I'm not going to do that because I'm not. And it's like, well, that's a, what are you saying? I'm like, that's a lot. That's really, you can't get away from it. It's being prideful in that. You're saying that you're too good to do that, and it's like, but that's not what that's not being a help, because if you're saying you're too good to be able to help, that's why, you know, you have the disciples, they're all gathered around and they're saying, man, which one's gonna be washing my feet, up until Jesus starts washing their feet, and then that's when they're like, oh. and that's just but that's just the real thing about it, is we got to put all of that aside. When you're really working together in your marriage, you understand, I'm not doing this because I'm his slave or I'm his servant. I'm doing it because I am trying to be a gift.
Yes. And that is the biggest thing that has helped me in my walk with God, in my marriage, just in my everyday life, and things that I can teach young girls, is that you are worth more. You have more value. And it is okay to be a woman, even though right now in this day of age, you know, they try and make it seem like it's not okay to be a woman, and that every woman needs to be put in like a man position.
What is that? The song that keeps coming to my head is that one song where they spell it independent and they're like, she got her own car.
Yeah. Oh man, we know what Brother Hall be jamming.
Oh, man.
but what I'm saying, that's what the world tries to push, like that. Yes. Oh, I can be independent. I don't need no man. But that's, again, it's trying to operate outside of your role. And then what do you have? You got a bunch of issues, but you don't want to talk about it because you're trying to be outside of your role.
Well, Sister Heather, thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for the mindset. And I think I speak for all of us on Coffee and the Truth. I don't think this is going to be our last encounter. I just love sitting down with you and just picking that brain of yours.
Thanks.
So before I end this, is there anything you want to tell our vibers?
I guess whether you are married or not, and you're a woman, know that you have worth and you have value, that you are created precious and something to be adorned, something to be loved and cherished, that most of all, you are a gift. And maybe you're not married yet, but you're still a gift to this world. You're a gift that God has created. So when you go out there, just remember you're worth more.
Now, you already know I got something to say. And the coffee is running low, so we gots to go. We love y'all. We appreciate y'all. Stay striving, stay vibing.